Hello, everybody.
The floorboards of the stage were smooth and cool beneath my worn shoes, a world away from the rough, sawdust-covered planks of my old workshop. The light was a physical force, a hot white glare that made the vast, dark space beyond feel infinite and empty. But I wasn't singing for the shadows or the unseen faces. I was singing for two people who I hoped, against all reason, were somewhere out in the world listening. My name is Ernesto. I am 54 years old. For most of my life, I was a carpenter. Not an artist, mind you, but a builder. I knew the weight of a good piece of oak, the song of a saw biting into pine, the honest smell of fresh-cut wood and varnish. Life was hard. My hands were always rough and often bleeding. But I didn't mind. I had a currency more valuable than any paycheck. I had a wife, Isabella, whose smile could soften the hardest day, and a son, Mateo, who was my living, breathing purpose. Our home was a small, modest thing, but I built the kitchen table where we ate our meals with my own hands. I remember the feel of Isabella's hand on my shoulder as I sanded it smooth, her quiet pride. I carved the headboard of Mateo's bed, a simple design of waves because he loved the sea. I laid every brick of our life with love and meticulous plans. They were my whole world, the blueprint for every single thing I did. I gave everything to Mateo. I believed in the power of an education, a door that had been closed to me. So I skipped lunches, packing only a piece of bread and some cheese so that the money could go into his college fund. I volunteered for every overtime shift, coming home long after the sun had set, my body aching, my clothes smelling of sweat and sawdust. "It's for his future, mi amor," I'd say, and she would nod, though the distance in her gaze seemed to grow a little wider each year. Isabella would be waiting, a quiet worry in her eyes, but she understood. The day Mateo graduated was the proudest of my life. I wore a suit that felt foreign on my frame, my carpenter's hands looking clumsy and large. When he walked across that stage, cap and gown on, I wept without shame. I thought it was the beginning of our new life. The struggle was over. We had succeeded. We would finally have time. Time for laughter, for slow mornings, for the life we had sacrificed for. But that was the peak, and the descent was swift and silent. The house, which should have felt lighter, grew heavier. Isabella grew distant, her conversations filled with a new, unfamiliar vocabulary of aspirations and experiences that didn't include me. My son, my Mateo, was suddenly a busy young man with a new job, new friends, a new world. Our phone calls, once weekly rituals I lived for, became brief, hurried affairs. "I'm busy, Papa. I'll call you next week." But next week rarely came. Then, one day, they were both just gone. There was no dramatic fight, no tearful goodbye. I came home from a job to a house that was too quiet. A note from Isabella on the kitchen table, the table I had built, said she needed to find herself, that she felt she had disappeared in the shadow of our life together. Mateo had simply stopped calling. My messages went unanswered. It was as if a trapdoor had opened beneath my feet and I had fallen through into a silent, empty universe. So, I waited. At first, it was a hopeful waiting. I'd set 2 places at the table. I'd jump every time the phone rang. Days turned into weeks, then months, then years. The hope curdled into a dull, constant ache. I lost the house, of course. I couldn't keep up with the payments on a single income, not when the grief made it hard to even lift a hammer. My tools, my companions for decades, were sold one by one. Then I was on the streets, another invisible old man sleeping in doorways, wrapped in newspapers for warmth. People looked through me, their eyes sliding away from my own. I was a ghost, a forgotten piece of furniture left on the curb. But deep inside, beneath the layers of grime and despair, I held on to 2 things. One was my voice, a rough but steady tenor that Isabella had once said could calm a storm. The other was the fragile, foolish hope that they might hear it. That's why I'm here, on this stage, squinting into these lights. Not to win, not for fame or money, just to sing one song for them. Maybe, just maybe, they are watching. Maybe a familiar melody will cut through the noise of their new lives and remind them of the man who loved them more than life itself. I never stopped, not for a single day. So, I sang. I sang of building our home with bleeding hands, of laying each brick with love and plans. I told the empty sky how they were, my light, my reason why. The music swelled, and my voice, though older and rougher, carried every ounce of that love. I sang of waiting at the door, a place where the memory of their laughter was still etched into the very air. I whispered of nights spent pleading into the silence. Come back home, don't let me go. But silence was the only reply I ever knew. My mind drifted to Mateo. I saw him so clearly on his graduation day, so handsome and bright. I fixed his tie, my thick fingers fumbling with the silk. You did it, Mijo, I had said, my voice thick with emotion. I gave him wings. I stayed behind to ensure he could fly, and now he was gone, and with him, all my time had vanished. I don't need much. I never did. Just one more day, one more hour to hear him call me Papa. To hear Isabella say my name with that old, familiar affection, just a sign that they remember who I am. But I am an old man, and I know that wishes don't travel that far. So I sang here on this stage, old and tired, full of years and regrets. Not for gold, not for fame, just to call out their names into the vastness, one last desperate time. The final note hung in the air, a fragile, trembling thing. The spotlight was blinding, but in my heart I was still standing at that empty door, waiting, always waiting, for footsteps that never came. The applause that erupted from the darkness was for the performance, but my soul was still and silent, still waiting, still the same.